Well, welcome back, everybody. This is episode 16 of the Outcast podcast. Tonight, we're going to be actually covering some lore. We're going to change up format a little bit, just with lack of big things happening. There's been a couple exciting announcements. The Channel Fireball thing we'll get into, but basically just going to have like an open forum discussion about lore. I think that this might be, with how busy all of us have been recently, probably a better route to feed lore instead of having to do separate videos and all that. So should be good. Hope you enjoy. Be sure to like and subscribe, and let's kick her off. So starting out, sort of some homework I gave prior to this cast was to dig a little bit into the lore, see what you're interested in, see what you wanted to find out more about, and we can just kind of go from there. So I know I've got some Mysteria stuff. It's actually the lost video that I've got like half edited and haven't gotten around to actually putting the finishing touches on and putting out. I've got an excerpt from a bit of history of Mysteria that I think is really cool and just fun to see that they do this deep of a dive into the lore themselves. And Blake, what did you kind of look at? What are you going to talk about or ask about?
Yeah, so like my favorite thing, primarily the lore that I've done, is I read through the original lore book for basically the first set. I haven't read through all the arcanes. It's all on the website. I've kind of skimmed through a lot of it and read some of it, but not nearly as much as I have because I've read through the whole first lore book. So the first 4 heroes that came out in the original set, I read a lot about, and so the 2 characters I've been primarily playing are Dorinthia and Azalea. So I don't have as much on Azalea, but Dorinthia's story is super cool to me. I think my favorite thing about the lore in this game is that they use the images from the book and the card art are tied together. So as you read the lore and the history of characters and you get some backstory, a lot of times it connects the card art, which for me is really big as somebody who played Star Wars Destiny. I always loved like identifying where the card art came from. It was cool to connect card art to the movie or show that it came from. So my favorite thing in the story of Dorinthia is the awakening. Basically, like most people, she in Solana, she admired the Hand of Soul, which is like their knight class of people who protect it and watch over them. But her family was blacksmiths and like not just blacksmiths, they were master blacksmiths. Literally, were given the legacy or the name Iron Song, which is where like the Iron Song cards come from. And where her namesake comes from. And it's cool because like they go to the awakening, which is where they learn like what they're called to be. It's where they're like given their thing, and they go into a room and it's like this ceremonial chamber. They stand in the middle of the room and they look around, and then objects will like light up and illuminate, and it will kind of show them their path. It's the awakening of their calling. So coming from a family of master blacksmiths, her assumption was she would go in, she would see the apron and the blacksmith's hammer, and they would light up, and she had her eyes on them. And then all of a sudden the room started to glow, and she saw all of these swords, hundreds of swords swirling around the room. And she saw the light of soul. And then it's like the sun illuminated the room, and it was just all swords. And that's where she realized like her calling was to be, a sword
Hand of Soul,
wielder, or the part of the Hand of Soul, which is really cool. I love that story because then like when you look at the card art on Singing Steel Blade, you understand where that art comes from. It's literally her standing with the sword spinning around the room, and it makes even more sense, which is super cool. So that's like my favorite Dorinthia little excerpt, is the whole awakening thing.
Yeah, it's cool too. Like there's a lot of, you start to piece together like a little bit of the world of Wraith as you're reading this stuff, because I noticed that you got the awakening in Solana, and then there's also tied to a specific day of the year is the Rite of Passing in Mysteria, where it's like the world of the afterlife is most closely tied to the material world, and it's like that's when it's basically just like the time of the year where different things become possible. And I think that I'm excited to see if there's other things that tie into like this grander way that the Magic works, which is really interesting to me because I love when there's underlying rules connecting everything. So it's like Solana, it's like, you've got the flow
that runs through.
Yep. So you've got these different lands who all interpret this stuff differently, but I would love it to see it all tie together as like it's really this thing happening that Solana interprets as like their opportunity to conduct the awakening, and it's Mysteria, they have a festival. It's called the Rite of Passing, and you know what I mean. So it's really, really cool to see stuff like that tie together.
I loved it because, like, obviously, again, Star Wars fan, lifelong Star Wars fan. It's my favorite thing. Like, when you read this stuff about the flow, you're like, it's like the Force. It binds all things. It ties everything together. It flows through us, and it it's like that cool feeling of like the sense of connectivity throughout the world, which is really cool. And I'm excited to see how those things tie, because it's interesting. Because other than like the Brute, right, like the first set of worlds feels more magical and mystical and more like has these, but it's more like positive, like it has that more positive aura to it. And it's interesting because like then in Arcane Rising, you have this really kind of like cool steampunk, but then the other worlds feel, it's like the opposite. The ratio is more like dark. You have like the arcane, which is in those two worlds are more dark, and then you have the pits with Azalea. So it's interesting that they have this like bright, more, like 3/4 of the worlds are like more flowery and nice and more mystical and magical and enlightened. And then you kind of get the sense that maybe like, oh, well, the Brutes were like the one-off, right? Like that's kind of how it was. And then you see like the Arcane Rising set come out, and I'm excited for that book just because it's the opposite. It's like, oh, there's this cool like steampunk vibe, seems kind of more upbeat, and then you see the other worlds, like those definitely seem a little more dark. Like they seem like they're a little more like there's something else going on.
The dichotomy is really cool. I love the fact that you've got Metrics, this like glowing city of the future basically, and then you've got the pits, which is essentially like where they strip mined to create Metrics, and like now it's just like the host of all of the black market underworld shady stuff like Cavdane operating there and all that stuff. So then you've got Volcor, which is basically just like real dark feudal Japan, like the different clans. And no, I guess it's not clans. I don't know. I still haven't decided like what it most parallels in the real world, because you've got like the hills and like the rice paddy mountain stuff of like Mysteria. That's very like feudal Japan. And then you've got Volcor, which is like the great houses that are constantly warring, and you've got like the Drakai who have like the dragon blood that like, that's what Kano is. And
it feels very tribal, like the worlds feel kind of this sense of
little
like
ancient China.
Well, because even
it's probably most accurate, like the dynasties, because I think that's actually the word I was looking for. It's got like the different dynasties that are like competing for power.
Well, it's interesting because like inside the world, it's like I think to that point, it would make sense to call them like dynasties, because then inside of each of them, you kind of have these different tribal and like classes where there are different people who fall in different lines of different groups and breakdown. I'm curious to see if, as you get deeper in, if there is more of that like tribal sense, right? Like if there's more like civil war with inside of the worlds, if there comes some history or some future stuff where like inside of each of these places, because right now, right, like each area feels pretty unified in the sense that like when you go to Solana, it's like the Hand of Soul, they all kind of fall under one group. But then anytime you watch right, like you watch a show or a story or something, there's always the underlying groups, right, that are trying to dismantle the king houses and stuff.
They've got lots of hints at that, which is really cool. So even like in like the perfect Solana, right, you've got Shyana, who's actually a diplomat from Solana. Like that's her background, right? And in her lore, when they're talking about what she does and how she kind of operates during the day, is like this glowing figure that operates justly, and then all of a sudden like nighttime comes and she's in the shadows and she's disguising herself, and it's like that you already see a little bit of that, like, all right, we laid out each of these worlds as they are, general view of them, now let's kind of give you a little bit of a tease at them, like in the ninja lore, Mysteria, talking about Katsu and just the Mysteria lore itself. There's like shadow agencies, like there's groups of people that operate to like protect Mysteria, but then you get a little sense that there's some groups that maybe operate for their own benefit as well, that are trying to consolidate like ancient relics and stuff like that. But I think that Volcor probably has the most just drastically obvious upheaval within itself, because like, you look at Command and Conquer, that card art, tying the card art back into the lore, like that's literally one of the generals from Volcor like commanding his army to go and mess up someone else within Volcor. So yeah,
you want to know something cool is I was looking to make just a custom playmat for myself, personal use. So I was looking for art. So I was on ArtStation, and if you type in Flesh and Blood, this is just cool, goes along with the lore. You can find a lot of the artist's original arts. And for Cheyenne, he's got drafts of different faces, different poses, like very early illustrations of her, of different poses. It's super, super cool. And I'll send you a link. So if you want to put that link up of her specifically, super cool. It's just you see what the illustrator and the artist went through to kind of get her look, and there's just tons of cool Flesh and Blood pictures, like the full art up there of the cards and where they came from. Super cool. And it's on ArtStation, so if you're bored and want to look at some cool stuff,
a lot of their artists have their stuff up on that website. I know I've used that website to find like art for like that first lore video, but just when I was exploring it, like because they credit all their artists obviously on their cards and then in the book as well, and they've got even their stuff that's not related to this world that is just the same aesthetic. That's really it's really fun to look through. But yeah,
that and Deviant Art was the other one that you could find. But yeah, same way, you look for cool backgrounds and things to have for mats. And
did you come to a conclusion on the art?
I just got the Kano mat, but then I found the Chain Lightning full art picture. I kind of want to make a plain mat for the Chain Lightning. It just, I like the Kano is it's got all the red on it, and just playing, it's a little, you know what I mean? Things slowly get dirty over time, especially if you're playing the playmat a while. Whereas the Chain Lightning is black, and then the little bit of blues and whites for the lightning. So it's just a darker look. And I kind of like the darker look more than the bright look. So I don't know. And then my wife, we're going to do the Twinning Blade art for hers, because she is a big Dorinthia fan. So we'll do the Twin Blade art.
That's cool art too.
Yeah. And it's just different.
It's just awesome.
Twinning Blade is cool art because it feels like art that would exist in the world, as opposed to card art of a character specifically, which obviously it's Dorinthia, but it's interesting because it feels like like something that they would put up in like the castle, or in a section, a wing of something, like to honor her in her service or something great she did, right? Like it's a tribute to her as a warrior, as opposed to like card of her doing something, which I think is really cool. It's got a different feel to it.
Because we were looking at, it was between that one and the Courage of Bladehold card is also on there. And I thought for sure she'd like the Courage of Bladehold. It doesn't show her whole face, just kind of cuts the midsection. Very, very aesthetically pleasing. But my wife looks at it and she's like, nope, I want the Twinning Blade one. And I'm like, and it's cool. They're both equally cool. So, but yeah, I agree 100%. That's a good point. It does look like that would be on a big banner. Hanging in the castle, you walk in and there's
above
your hero
fireplace,
Dorinthia. That's a great visual picture. But yeah, that makes 100% sense.
I also am really hoping that between now and March they do like lore chunk releases, because I think that would tide me over really well.
See, for me, the thing in lore that I can't get away from is the fact that like my family, we all love and watch through like all of Avatar. And we've talked about this before, but like I can never disconnect Kano, like adult Kano, from Fire Lord Ozai in the Avatar: The Last Airbender. Like it just looks like something that would be him. Even like the Command and Conquer, it like that art feels like something from the Fire Nation.
Like if you pan out, it would have like the hovercraft like to like I just roam across the world. Yeah.
Like there is a picture that even some of the colors, the reds, the golds, and the darks. I mean, it is aesthetically identical.
Yeah. So if a game designer or somebody involved with a company is listening to this, if you could confirm that there is some relation in your mind or
Inspiration
somebody
to
at
that,
some
yeah.
point was inspired by the Fire Nation from the Avatar, I would be so satisfied just to know that. Like, it would make me want to play Wizard really bad.
But we don't need a Vanilla Ice Queen situation to arise from it. It was dun 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 dun. Okay,
yeah,
it had that extra beat in it.
Yep.
We're just saying it looks familiar.
It looks familiar, and that's fine because I love Avatar: The Last Airbender. Like, it's just a great series. So anybody who hasn't watched it, check it out.
Yeah, I've never seen that, so I had to pull it up, and I'm like, holy, this is the same dude.
Right. I saw Kano, right, and I didn't immediately put it together, but I was playing, my wife was playing my Dorinthia deck, and I was playing Kano, and we were just playing at the table, and my daughter walked by and literally pointed at it, and she goes, "That looks like Fire Lord Ozai." I was like, wait, oh my God, it does. Like, it hit me.
Is Fire Lord Ozai, is he royalty like Kano?
Yeah. He's the
He's
also they're both royalty too
of the Fire Nation. Yeah, the Fire Nation is like a nation of firebenders, and he leads the Fire Nation.
That's kind of funny because Kano's royalty as well. So
he is royal blood. He has the blood of the dragon in him, which is fun fact. You cannot be Drakai without having the blood of the dragon. So it's like part skill, part heritage, but you need both pieces in order to.
I learned that on Game of Thrones, so I can agree 100% with that.
So
there we go.
This story,
I didn't move Kano, man.
This story is the Legend of Mistress Ikaru, and it's cool that they include lore, like within the world lore. Like, it's like this is like a story passed down within the world, so it's like a story in the story, right? And I think it's cool to keep that vaguity in there, where I don't know if that's a real word, but where they are like, there could be truth behind this, but also this isn't presented to you as what's happening in the world. It's presented to you as this is stories told within the world that could hold.
So it's lore within the lore.
It's lore within the lore. That's how much I love lore. I heard you like lore, so we added
lore
to your lore. Yeah.
Squared.
Yeah,
Loreception.
Exactly.
Loreception.
I know there's a PDF of the lore book floating around, but they've also got like everything on their website. So if you're inspired by anything on this, you can ask us to cover it in the comments, or you can go and check it out for yourself on the website. But it's really satisfying for me myself to dig into. So I think that there's people out there that would enjoy it as well. But so long ago, there was a mysterious woman who landed on the shores of Mysteria, and she came from an unknown land. So I love that they are hinting at this greater world, and that they talk about like the initial like pilgrimage of people over, and like Solana's history, talking about how they followed the light, or they came to this land and discovered the light and began solidifying their nation around that. And the people of Mysteria kind of came from a distant land as well. So just lots of like hints at a greater world, which gives them so much room for expansion. All right, so she came from an unknown land, traveling from village to village. This mysterious young woman rarely spoke, occasionally giving voice to a question or engaging with someone in quiet discussion. One day, she came across a wizened old man sitting on a log, carefully setting out his wares on a worn blanket. On the ground before him lay 5 items: a chunk of rock, a dark crystal, a pale branch, a vibrant flower, and a tiny pouch. Looking over the items, the woman found herself drawn to the pouch. Old and faded, its drawstrings were tied in a simple knot, concealing the contents within. Curious, she asked if he knew what lay within, and if she might open it. Silently, the old man shook his head. After a moment's deliberation, the woman removed a ring from her finger, a deceptively plain silver band. Would this be a fair trade? The old man merely smiled in response, offering a small nod. Thanking him, she passed him the ring, taking the pouch in exchange. The woman continued on her travels, moving from village to village. For months, she traveled across Mysteria, seemingly searching for something, yet never finding what it was that she was looking for. Finally, she came across a steep mountain range, carefully picking her way down the rocky slope. Standing atop a small hill, she looked down upon a rolling valley and pulled out the pouch that she had traded for so long ago. From the pouch, the woman removed a single, pale seed. She planted it with her own 2 hands, watering and caring for the tiny seedling that sprouted. The seedling slowly grew into a beautiful cherry blossom tree, bright and cheerful in its stance high above the village built below. Mistress Ikaru, once a mysterious stranger, took a name in honor of the tree that now watched over her home. The House of Blossoms flourished under her careful guidance, growing from a tiny village into a house worthy of its founder. Long after the mistress took her last breath, the Ikaru clan would continue to grow, thriving under the branches of the cherry blossom tree. So, a couple things that I love about this story. One, it's like fable within the story, within the lore itself, right? But two, they've already hinted in the mysterious lore about like Katsu looking for ancient artifacts and his search for these items that could help his people solve. There's a sickness that specifically his clan deals with that causes basically people to become decrepit really early and die, and it's like a curse more than a sickness. That's how it's viewed by the people. And he embarks on a quest effectively to find some sort of help through ancient relics. There's a list of ancient items that at the end of his story he commits to going out and finding. And I love that. I love things. I love cool old things. So like the fact that like there's this silver ring and there's like these things hinted at in this story, or like this cherry blossom tree, like there's stuff that they could just like incorporate into the game. That would be really cool card art to me. Is super, super exciting. But I like just learning tidbits. That's my big thing with lore. I like playing a card and being like, oh, when I'm playing Viserai and I play Read the Runes, I'm like, oh, dude, that's the girl from the story that he totally like mutilates because she tries to kill him with her like creatures that she rises up. So it's like every time I play that card, I think of that, and that's exciting to me that I get to know what the background is behind this card art. So that's the legend of Mistress Ikaru, and there is a ton more online and in that PDF kind of floating around. So check that out. But if there's other stuff you guys want to know, hit us up in the comments. And I know I would love to talk about it. Blake and Jason. I know Jason's learning
I like it.
as we are basically talking through this stuff. But yeah, moving on from lore, changing the course of discussion a little bit here. I know Jason wanted to hit on Malaysia, the Malaysia meta, and some results there, as well as standings. And I know we also want to hit on the Channel Fireball announcement, which is really exciting to me. But let's go ahead and hit her off, Jason.
Every time I hear that, all I can think about is Pitbull with Fireball. So that's bothersome to me. But other than that, I think we'll be okay. All right. So I think it's kind of crazy how different the meta in Taiwan is versus New Zealand. Well, this was Taiwan Nationals.
Well, we can cover. Yep. Yeah, we can cover Malaysia, Taiwan. We'll cover it all.
Taiwan just had, they have a bigger. Does Malaysia only do top four? Are they restricted there because they always only show, or they have smaller player pool? But anyway, Taiwan's meta is drastically different than New Zealand's. If you look at the top 8, you have, and this should be no surprise to anybody, but what Dorinthia is in their half. Then you have 3 Katsus and 1 Dash. So no Bravos, no Rhinar, and just a flood of Dorinthias, which I would have expected New Zealand to have that. So I don't know if New Zealand doesn't have as many players playing Dorinthia, or if they've just figured out how to play against it better. Obviously, Dorinthia was in the finals against Dash, but there was 2. I mean, they had an even, two across the board, 2 split in New Zealand, where this was almost 2 classes. 1 Dash snuck in, but it's just drastically different. And it would be nice to see some of the gameplay styles to see why they're so different between the 2 places.
I'd be really curious to watch gameplay from Malaysia or Taiwan.
And the other thing that was a little disturbing, and we had talked about this yesterday, is there's no talk. There was all this hype around the New Zealand Nationals, and then there was nothing for Taiwan. Nothing. These are great players just as much as New Zealand or any other country. And I just didn't, there was a couple posts on it, but it wasn't like the constant posts from New Zealand. And when New Zealand's nationals were done, it was, this is the best players in the world. This is a top player in the world. And then Taiwan does it, and it's just, okay, well,
it's over. Here's pictures of the event. I wonder if that's a lot of that is language barrier.
And that was my question is it language barrier? But I mean, it's still, we see the deck lists. I don't get it.
I think to some degree too, like, to be honest, it's like we as American players playing other games that are based in America, I think like when we played Destiny based in America, based specifically in, Minnesota, like literally the company that made it was in Minneapolis. I think what you see sometimes is maybe not an aversion, that's the wrong word, but like just a lack of inclusion of other countries sometimes, because like players came from all over the world to play Destiny at the Worlds. Yeah. But for some reason, you never reference them as the best players in the world. You never kind of think about the fact that players who won in Europe, they went through a gauntlet of players to get to the top. And just the same as anyone else, right? But for some reason, like the country of origin of the game sometimes can have a something to do with that, because the designers, the people who kind of revolve in the game started probably there. So the content creator base started there. So most of the talk surrounded there, and it hasn't expanded out yet. And there's almost this sense of sometimes when a game starts somewhere, the competitive scene there is viewed as the best. And until someone, takes down the champ, right? Like then they're the champ, and that's kind of the attitude. And I'm curious if that's some of the like not intentional, but like a subconscious bias where it's like, well, everybody just kind of goes, Matt Rogers is the best player in the world. So if he won New Zealand Nationals and he's from New Zealand, all the best players are from New Zealand. That's just like this subconscious thing that everyone's developed in their brain because they've had the longest competitive scene and they have a lot of content creators, It's not intentional, but it's like an unintentional subconscious bias because that's where it all started.
Right. And I get that, and I don't want to offend anybody with this, but Taiwan's got 24 million people. New Zealand's got 4.5. So when you just look at player base of how many people are playing,
it could
the
be
game,
more people. Yeah,
I mean, right. It's statistically you would think more people in Taiwan would play, but also it started in New Zealand. So what's the actual player base number? Yeah.
And that's a thing that, and I've referenced that before. Of I wish I could see those numbers of where their player base is, where their sales are going. Yeah. Is it really that much higher in New Zealand, or is Taiwan getting a ton of that product? Because Taiwan's not that far, and you're not that far from it. And so I don't know if that makes a difference or not. And US, we just don't even have a meta. We have zero meta in our country because we don't have tournaments. And
so what I would like to see next year, whether it's like an online thing that Channel Fireball and that partnership like starts putting on, or whatever it may be, some sort of US tournament. Because you've got New Zealand Nationals, you got Road to Nationals that took place sort of in the already established countries, right? I would love to see like a Road to Nationals in the US, whether it's digital or in person, depending on where we're at with all this COVID stuff. But I would also love to see them at least talk about like a Worlds. Whether that's still hosted in New Zealand or it's an online thing, whatever it may be, like it'd be really cool. Because I mean, New Zealand, it would be like people traveled all over to Minnesota. Like we got a ton of content creators and non-content creators coming from Denmark, Italy, France. We had people from Spain.
I mean, the people I played against. I played against people in England, Spain,
and like not like 2 or 3 of them. Like
a lot.
In a field of like 600 people that were playing at Worlds, I would say 20% were outside of the US.
Well, and I mean, even the fact that like our normal weekly for like Dane and I, the normal weekly that we played at when we showed up the Tuesday before Worlds, I think there were like 20 people, and almost probably 8 to 10 of them were people from outside of the US. They had just
flew in like a week.
They were in
ready for Worlds, and they're like, well, let's play
they were
some
in for a week.
Yeah.
They just went to every locals we had, which Granted, there was a locals every night of the week, so they were playing all week.
And they were at the game center Monday before they went, because we met all the same guys, just at different locations.
And I want to reiterate, that's for Minnesota in the wintertime, where like it's not awesome, right? Imagine the people that would travel to New Zealand that would have finally like not an excuse, but like a good reason to go to New Zealand for something. Like, oh, you can pitch that to the wife and like be like, oh, the guys and I are going out to just do like a week trip, meet some buddies that we met online over there or whatever. And I just, what more could you ask for in New Zealand? Right. Beautiful country, way better than Minnesota, just being totally honest, like aesthetically, right? I love my state, but it is what it is.
But even with that poorly run Destiny game, they still ran events in other countries and nationals in other countries with big events. So that even with the right. So also, my thing is include the rest of the world. Like, I understand you started in New Zealand. It's been a year. You're patting all these guys in the back, but now it's time to spread out. So you do a Blitzathon. That was great. We got to see live gameplay from the top New Zealand players. Now let's do something digital. Let's get the top Malaysian player, number 1 Dorinthia, put him up against Matt Rogers' Dash Deck. Let's see that. We can do that on TTS. We can do it on a webcam event. We can host it. There's a lull in the community before the channel Fireball announcement, and still to now, cards are going up because of collectors only. So let's get that part straight. Everybody that's getting surprised and all the comments about, oh, Unlimited's going to crash the prices. No, they're not. These are collectors coming in strictly off the Magic market. That's where these are. Those are collectors. They're not tournament players. So stop saying Unlimited's going to drop the prices of Alpha. It is not. That's ridiculous. They're going to stay up. They might not move as fast, but those prices are collectors' prices.
Yeah, because the people that want to play right now with the cards, their only option is Alpha, so they're going to buy it. So when Unlimited comes out, you're going to have less people buying Alpha. That's just how it's going to work. But the prices,
but the values are going to stay. They shouldn't change, because those are a one-run, limited quantity item. I just would like to see more inclusion. Take places that did have nationals and put them up. Make a little small tournament. Take your top 8s from both, bracket them out based on their pairing, 1 versus 8, Taiwan versus New Zealand, and have a TTS or webcam tournament.
And I've heard people talk about how like TTS is like a terrible like way to run stuff, and it's like, if you're playing for Worlds, right, and they try to run on TTS, I get that there's code that you can see the other person's hand. Got it. Like, that's gonna exist if you try to do stuff online. Webcam is a good way around that, but at the same time, if we're just talking like an exhibition just to like get people together and like show the game, if you're gonna cheat, I mean, top players, I'm assuming that Matt Rogers isn't going to go in and code TTS and run some program that lets him see his opponent's hand. I feel that that's not a realistic fear to have when we're talking about how
I don't think he needs it. Clearly he doesn't need it.
I would say top 8 New Zealand and Taiwan are not going to cheat.
Yeah.
And I mean,
I'd say 95% of people are not going to cheat. So saying we can't play digitally because TTS is bad because of cheaters, it's like, if they need to cheat to win, fine.
Then let them cheat. Let them cheat. We're not playing for big prizes.
Come to.
Yes. Who cares? We just want to play tournaments, because we know that the collector's market doesn't drive this game.
No,
the tournaments is what drives any collect. Is there any CCG, TCG that is in existence right now that does not have a tournament scene?
I mean, the good ones all do. The good ones
been around for more than 3 years. Is there any? Yeah. There could be that I don't know of. I can't think of one.
No, but there's not collectibles. I think LCGs obviously are a different story.
That's different because they're modeled differently
and stuff. Yeah, collectible card games always do. I think the reality is like, I think you have to provide an opportunity for players to play if you expect players to stay, because the reality is like
trade market.
If
you want them to stay, let them play.
Let them play. Let the kids play.
360. Oh wait, that's an NFL.
Gosh, great. Now we're gonna get flagged by the NFL and our channel's gonna get shut down. I think it's really important for a game to get product in players' hands. That's absolutely paramount. And I think that's the issue that we're running into right now is like the game has hit kind of a lull and players there was a lot of information coming out. People were clearly interested. And now like everything is just it feels like everything has hit rock bottom as far as like the excitement level goes because cards aren't selling, nothing is moving. The only things that are moving are things that would actually turn a lot of new players off, right? Like, oh, cool, there's like a case of this thing out there. It's $3,000. Okay, cool. Well, I'm not interested in a game that cost me $3,000 to buy a case. And then they realize, oh, it's just because it's alpha print. Oh, cool. I'll go find another case. Oh, there is no case. Like, right. And I think personally, I think that's like, if I'm being honest, I get that people are collectors, but I think if you're a player and you're out there scalping like Crucible boxes or like you see cases of Crucible drop in stores and you're just scooping them up to have 12 boxes of Crucible, I think you're part of the issue with the game and not allowing new players to get access to the game. I think that's an issue because Crucible is not a collector set. So there's no reason to buy 2 cases of it and put it on your counter unless you're just a clown who's going to try and rip people off with singles. I just think it's stupid. Like, I think it's dumb. I think it's unhealthy for the game. Like, we come from Dragon Ball Super, okay? And nothing is more toxic in the market than buyouts. And that's effectively what's happening is you see it all over the place. People complaining about not being able to get Crucible. Matt Rogers was literally saying he has to like let it out a little bit at a time because people are just buying it out. That's just stupid. It's unhealthy for a game. And if you're somebody who says like, I want my investment of early alpha print stuff to be worth something, it's not going to be worth anything if you kill the game because you're buying all the product. Like, that's just the truth of the matter.
Back and forth on this a little bit too. Like,
but I to Blake's point,
alpha is fine. Buy it. I don't care.
Yeah, alpha. It's the alpha, right? That's the one. But Crucible, there's no value there. There's no value in Crucible.
No, there is. You look like a jackass. Like to just buy it up for no reason.
Yeah. Like 2 or 3 cards. I mean, I have tons of foils and cold foils and Majestics coming out of my ass because I bought like 4 or 5 boxes of them that I opened. I have so much extras. What are you gonna sell them? Majestics for $3 to $5 a piece. A foil
they're not worth anything.
They're not. So to your point, I agree. Don't buy Crucible out. There's really no reason.
It doesn't help the community. It's not helping anybody.
No. Yep. So pivoting a little bit here, we got the Channel Fireball release. Speaking of helping the community, so I think that was actually pretty well done. The timing of when they're going to have unlimited available and when they make that announcement, I think was slightly off. Like they maybe could have announced
the week of.
They should have announced it like when unlimited was becoming available because. Big thing, Channel Fireball, Magic the Gathering, right? Like they're going to pull in a ton of interest, I'm assuming, just by posting about it on their website. So, because I know they're huge in the Magic community, so they're going to have all of these players that are like, oh, this is a really cool looking game. I think that it's okay because they also have a really good web store set up and they've got like the announcement where you can pre-order the unlimited run product and you can pre-order all that, so that's cool. I'm glad they did that. If they would have just made the announcement and like set it all up saying Magic the Gathering players, check out this other cool game that we're going to start putting stuff out for, and then been like, oh, also you got to wait like a month and a half, I think that would have been bad. But they've got the stuff on the website, so it's not terrible.
Yeah, I mean, it's to some degree like what they're doing with that is similar, and like it's running very parallel with what Bandai is doing with Digimon, which is doing showing the game off, letting people see what's happening with it. What would have been really cool, I mean, I know you can still get starters, right? Like you can find starters places and you can get your hands on it. It would have been cool if they would have had access to that like directly. I haven't really looked super deep into what Channel Fireball has, but it would have been cool if they would have done some starter deck playthroughs and gotten some early releases and stuff to people immediately, like, hey, order this today, and then part of your pre-order is you get 2 starter decks now, and then unlimited we do the limited stuff.
Is he done? You froze up a little bit there, Blake, but I think you're done. It's funny because that you say about them having product and stuff, because Team Covenant, just released their pre-sale of unlimited, so that alone is great. But then the bastards, they have to put out the rainbow or the cold foil weapons that you get 2 of when you pre-order, right? So I want to get some unlimited print. So I missed it time 1. So I put my email in to join the waiting list. That comes out I got it at like 12:43. I was with a customer at 1:35. I'm like, oh, I'm going to go order probably 2 of each. So then I will get 4 weapons and I'll be happy. Well, I would have been happy, but it already sold out round 2. So I don't know how much unlimited, but I hope they have an unlimited amount printed because people are buying it like crazy already.
Yeah, I'm sure unlimited they'll print on demand. Like that makes sense to me. But
because it is called unlimited, so I mean, if there was a limit, I would be upset. And I think the reason Team Covenant sold out is everybody just wants the special weapons because once again they'll sell for a lot, so you think you're going to pay for your boxes, and I just don't think that's going to happen. And they might be, $20 cards, $30 cards, but people ask $100 for them when they first come out.
Yeah. So yeah, just like, so you said you didn't really know much about like the Channel Fireball stuff. Like they've already had like some cool content come out, and like admittedly it's probably not going to be as like high tier meta critiquing as you get from like the content creators in New Zealand who participated in Worlds and stuff like that. But like LSV, the like Luis, I'm not sure how you actually pronounce it, but Scott Vargas, he is like a huge Magic, well known in the Magic community, and he did like a whole like game introduction, like break into the card pool, stuff like that, and like that stuff's really cool. I think that's going to help draw a lot of players outside of the game that are seeing this through Channel Fireball's website into the game. So that's really exciting. And I just pulled up their website again actually here, and they've got Flesh and Blood listed before Pokemon, which is kind of cool. It's Magic, Flesh and Blood, Pokemon on their header. So
that's another card game that's having a huge thing because of content creators.
Well, what's that? Pokemon?
Oh my god, that game's exploding right now with buyouts and things like that. Mason watches a couple of them, and they're pulling, some of the earliest set and pulling $60,000-$70,000 cards, drove prices up on tons of stuff. So
really?
Oh, you did? Oh yeah, Logan or Jacob Paul or something like that did these case openings, and it drove the market crazy. I mean, you go to Target. Mason wanted to buy a couple packs of football cards, they have lists at Targets around the area here where I'm at that say limit 4 on any trading card or football, Magic, DBS, any of the cards that they sell. It says limit of 4 packs per person because people just keep going and buying them out.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm walking in and out of the stores.
I haven't seen a DBS in a Target forever because even those I still like to grab a pack if I'm going in there and just open a pack. But I haven't seen them in stock. I saw very rare, just a limit time with set 10, and I've never seen a set 11 in a store.
All right, well that will wrap up our podcast for today. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to like and subscribe. Go ahead and leave comments. Like, in all honesty, with kind of this lull we're anticipating here, we would love to actually hear what you guys like, what you don't like, what you would be interested in watching more of. I know gameplay's kind of been lacking across the board, but on our channel, we will try to keep our side of the street clean. So we're going to work on making sure that continues coming out. But other than that, really appreciate you guys joining us and hope you enjoyed. And we will talk to you all next time. Peace.
See ya.
See ya.